So we're looking at wild harvest edibles. Thou prepares a table before me, part 52. And this is 52. That means that once a week, that's been a year's worth of presentations and maybe more than one plant per week. So there is a lot of material here. It just dawned on me this week as we hit 52. So go with me now as we move into our next plant here. So just a reminder that as you navigate any health challenge, it's always recommended that you partner with a medical practitioner that shares your philosophy of the care of the human body, disease, and then health. And that the information shared here in this presentation is meant to educate and improve your wellness toolbox and can help you return to wellness and keep you from getting sick. It shouldn't be construed as medical advice, but just another tool that you can use that others have successfully used in other situations that are similar. Always investigate and verify any treatment protocol or procedure, no matter what it is, without blindly accepting it, without doing your due diligence. Thomas Edison said a long time ago that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Another individual, Ellen White, back in 1885, in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, made the statement that there are many ways of practicing the healing art, but there's only one way that heaven approves. God's remedies are the simple agencies of nature that will not tax or debilitate the system through their powerful properties. Pure air and water, cleanliness, a proper diet, and purity of life, and a firm trust in God are remedies for the want of which thousands are dying. Yet these remedies are going out of date because their skillful use requires work that the people do not appreciate. Fresh air, exercise, pure water, and a clean, sweet premises are within the reach of all, with but little expense. But drugs are expensive, both in the outlay of means and the effect produced upon the system. And again, in 3 John 1:2, it says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers." 3 John 1 and 2. In Romans 12:1 and 2 says, "I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, whole, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." So those are some things just to keep in mind as we move forward and are studying about the various plants and things that we have to discuss. So one of the most fun plants that we see in spring is the glacier lily, and it's also known as Erythronium grandiflorum. And it's frequently at snowline in the subalpine areas. And it's in Western North America, west of the Rockies. It comes up from a deep bulb, about 10 inches tall, and the flower is yellow. It's one of the very first bulbs of spring, comes up in the subalpine areas. And each bulb comes up to from 1 to 3 stems and can be up to 16 inches in height. That's pretty tall. So it depends. And it has a nodding flower on a stem that supports the flower. Has 6 fused petals. And that then fuses into what are called tepals. And they curve back from the stigma and the stamen, hanging towards the ground as the petals curve back. So each leaf has a bulb and with 2 or 3 stems, and it comes up to a very long, 4 to 10 inch long, soft and fleshy leaf, and their blades are wide and they curve to the inside. The bulbs, the leaves, and the young seed pods are all edible. So the young seed pods are going to be something that you're going to see in the fall, and later on after the flowers are gone, so that there's different things that you can eat at different times of the seasons. The bulbs are going to be present in the spring, and then throughout the year. I think it's best to harvest them before they flower. And then the seed pods are going to come back, come on later in the season, so you can get them in the fall. So that's nice to know. You just want to make sure that you have them well identified before you need to harvest them. As soon as the shoots begin to emerge, you want to have those harvested. They're when they're raw, they're milky and bitter. When they're cooked, they're starchy and sweet. So eat them in small amounts. Too much can actually function as an emetic, which you don't want to do that. So excessive amounts may cause you to vomit. So that's not a good idea. The leaves you can eat raw or cooked. So that's helpful. And the young seed pods can be cooked like green beans, and it lowers the bulb energy if you harvest them too soon, and also if you cook them. So eating them fresh, they have a higher energy content. So here's a look at an instrument here. It's kind of it almost looks like a spear that they use to actually dig these bulbs up. It's pointed and long and flat bladed. It's probably a hammered end of a camping bar, because they are quite deep, and so that can help them get them out. And that's probably a very effective tool for doing that, because you don't want to break them off, because all that white is blanched because it's been underground. The finger over here is about the size of the bulb, so it's a fair bit of work to get to them. Should be probably kept as a last resort kind of food, kind of more of an alpine kind of a food. Glacier bells is a recipe using bell pepper. So use 1 large red bell pepper, chopped up a ½ cup of glacier lily bulbs, ½ cup of potato finely diced, so you can use them, kind of mix and match there. ½ cup chopped clove flower, a clove of garlic, and a fresh basil leaf for garnish. I'm going to cut that pepper in half, remove the seeds. You can saute that garlic and potato and cauliflower in water, so you're going to be keeping it oil free. And then mix the pepper mix inside the pepper halves, and then bake in the oven at 370 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 30 minutes. Then once you have that out, just go ahead and garnish it with some fresh basil, and that'll add a nice touch to it. So caution, you want to make sure that you are harvesting glacier lily. There's another plant that has a similar appearance. They can grow in the same areas, but aren't often in the same areas. Death camas, we've talked about camas in the past, can grow in a similar habitat. You want to just be careful if you're harvesting it before it flowers. If the white flower, the death camas on the right there is what is very indicative of what it is. So you just want to be certain that you have the glacier lily. One thing that you can notice is that the death camas has very narrow leaves and the shallower bulb, while the glacier lily has wide leaves and a deep bulb. And the V shape is much more pronounced in the glacier lily. So those are some things, and you're not going to find it typically coming and emerging into the snow in the same fashion that you would have a glacier lily doing. Some medicinal benefits: the bulb is ground into a poultice, beneficial for skin conditions and minor wounds. You can make a leaf-based tea from the glacier lily. You can use it topically as an antibacterial, kind of has a broad spectrum antibacterial effect. Also helpful in fever reduction and in swelling and infection, and helps also, there's indication that it can be helpful in helping to mitigate tumor development. So a lot of different aspects that are helpful for using the glacier lily. Our next one is Goldenrod, Solidago species. It comes in different names: Canada goldenrod, Missouri goldenrod, northern goldenrod. There's over 120 different edible species across the continent. So lots and lots of different kinds of goldenrod. It has a typical golden spike up on top like that. Very tiny flowers. It's native. It's a hardy perennial, up to 5 feet tall. It has hair on the stems. So that's a thing to watch for. The crushed leaves of some of the varieties have a licorice or anise scent to them, and it easily crossbreeds between the different species and subspecies. So difficulty in identifying it is paramount. It's not something that you have to worry about getting the wrong thing. The only thing that would be close to it is tansy, but it has a flat button-like flower, not like we see on the goldenrod. So it blooms in late summer to early fall. It has some allergic components to it, but not in the same fashion that ragweed has. It's typically blamed for allergy issues when ragweed is the primary allergen component. And as it turns out, if one utilizes a goldenrod tea, it can actually help minimize any allergic reactions to the goldenrod. So the flowers are clusters in yellow and branching sprays up to 2 feet long. So that's quite a long spray at the end of the plant. The flowers range in size from 1/8 to 1 inch in size. The leaves are narrow and have a single vein down the center. Dark green with smooth or hairy edges, depending on the species or subspecies that you have. And they can range to 1 to 4 inches in length. So you can see that the flowers are very small. You see a bee on the flower up on the top, and you see the person's thumb here, very tiny, with the stamens and the anthers are sticking out well beyond the flower for each individual flower on the inflorescence. The seeds, the leaves, and the flowers are all edible. In the fall, you'll see the flowers going to seed and it's kind of this fuzzy flower head appearance that's here. The seeds can be gathered by taking a bag and knocking the bag over the bag, and they'll drop into it. And then you'll have to sift out the chaff. But they're very small. You can see that 1 centimeter in size is the length of that line there as a comparison. So on your screen, it's not 1 centimeter, but it's scaled and probably looked at underneath a microscope here. So they're tiny seeds, but the leaves are also edible, much easier to collect. Some harvest tips. As you're harvesting, all the above ground parts are edible. So that is good to know. The root can be used in a medicinal way, but all the above ground parts are edible and can be consumed raw or cooked. So harvesting the leaves before the plant flowers, freshly open the young flowers are best. Dry them for future use. You can use the flowers in teas and use in salads as a colorful garnish. Again, you see the flowered, opened, kind of the puffy flower head gone to seed there. You can shake those flower heads over a bucket or over a bowl or a paper bag, whatever you happen to have handy, and collect the seeds. And you're going to get the tufts. You can see the tufts that are collected or attached to that as well. And then you can actually grind those into a powder that can be used to thicken soups and stews. So goldenrod tea, just take the dry leaves and flowers for the tea, store it in an airtight container until you're ready to use them. And when you do make the tea, just 1 tablespoon per cup of boiled water, and then let that steep for 10 minutes to extract the therapeutic and beneficial qualities from it. So one thing to be cautious of is that there is a leaf fungus that can be present. And this is just an example of what those might look like. You want to avoid using any goldenrod that has fungus on it of any kind, because that actually can be toxic for human consumption. So make sure it's a good, clean goldenrod leaf. That's the primary concern to pay attention to. This would probably be present later on in the season as the plant establishes it and goes on through the season, as compared to early on and fresh first thing in the season. From a medicinal standpoint, it has a wide use range from digestion all the way to cancer benefits. The dried leaves and flowers are aseptic, which means they can help stop bleeding. Another common name for it is woundwort. And this was a common knowledge back during the Crusades. The soldiers of the Crusades were well acquainted with the benefits of goldenrod for helping to stop bleeding wounds. The tea is great for cold and flu, helps to reduce mucus production, so that's the flowers and the leaves kind of combined. It also functions as a diuretic and help the kidney to flow more freely. Snakebite treatment. It's also, if used early in the season as a tea, can help reduce the allergies that may come from interacting with the pollen from goldenrod. So the flowers are an important component. The roots are useful for burn treatments, especially useful for a topical application because it has an astringent nature. It can help to draw tissue together. The flowers, crushed and chewed, can be beneficial for a sore throat. The tea is beneficial for diarrhea, helping to slow that down, fever and body pains, as well as referred to earlier, snake bites. You just apply them directly to the snake bite, either crushed or dried and moistened. The leaf extract, essentially making a tea, is antispasmodic, diuretic, and antiseptic. So basically it has some bacterial reducing properties. And it may be helpful for urinary tract diseases. It's actually used in Europe quite significantly for urinary tract infections. We mentioned its benefits for the kidney, so it's helpful and has found benefit for treating kidney stones. It's high in the antioxidant quercetin, which is also found in apples and abundant in onions. This is something that is one of the things that's been helpful here the last little while with the illnesses that people have been encountering. The quercetin is just a key antioxidant component, and this is a wild place where you could get that. Onions may not always be in season. Your goldenrod might be in more season before your onions are ready to be harvested. So as a tea, it can also, as we mentioned, mitigate the ragweed allergies as well as the goldenrod allergies. And if you gargle with goldenrod essential oil, it just promotes general oral health. It can be used for toothache as well as canker sores and things like that. And also has been shown to be helpful in eliminating candida yeast infections. So that is a useful thing to be aware of and have on hand and know that you can use for that, because that's a very pernicious type of a yeast infection when it's contracted. So beneficial for UTIs, catarrh, influenza, whooping cough, again, bladder and kidney stones. Got the whooping cough there again. The leaves and the flowers are actually antiparasitic, especially for worms, antihelmintic, antiseptic, astringent. Again, that's drawing tissue together. That's why it's so good as a styptic for wound healing, to stop bleeding. Febrifuge, so that's anti-fever roles. And then diaphoretic. So diaphoretic means that it basically helps perspiration to take place, which we know that our body's skin is one of its primary excretory organs. We don't really like to think of it that way, but that's what's happening, is we get rid of a lot of waste through our skin. That's why cleanliness is important. And it can also have benefits for those suffering from diabetes. So the roots can be helpful as in a warm compress. Just boil those roots and stems and apply them to muscle strains. So if you sprain an ankle, twist a knee, stretch your back, you can use a warm compress of the goldenrod roots and stems to help mitigate the muscle strain pain and help aid healing. So to review this again, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.